Hey, are you applying to college soon? Or maybe you recently applied and you got all your admissions decisions back. Maybe as a student, you're just wondering what goes on behind those closed doors. In this video, what we're going to talk about is 5 random reasons colleges may reject you. My name's Brooke. I've been tutoring and teaching the SAT and the ACT for over a decade and a half. I also help students with the college admissions process overall. I have coached a student to a perfect score on the most recent SAT. In fact, just this last August SAT, I had a student score a perfect 1600. Woo, woo, holla, you know who you are. If you're wondering how to totally crush your standardized tests, head over to SupertutorTV.com and check out the best SAT prep course ever or the best ACT prep course ever. We have over 100 hours of video tutoring in each course. And if you don't want to spend a cent, subscribe to our mailing list. It's totally free. SupertutorTV.com/subscribe, and we'll let you know if we have anything exciting going on here at SupertutorTV. And if we have new videos, we shoot them your way and make sure that you're in the know. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, find us there too. Let's get into this. Now, this is based on my research of interviews and books and newspaper articles and things that have interviewed admissions persons. It's also based a little bit on my personal experience with students. My goal with this video is not to just tick you guys off and make you angry about the college admissions process, because I know that for some of you, that's possibly what this video will do. My hope in making this video is to share with you some reasons you might not get into college that have nothing personal really to do with you or nothing that's within your personal control. But in any case, these kind of ideas could affect anybody who's applying to college because the process is somewhat arbitrary at times. So my number one random reason that I see students getting rejected is that they don't fit the part. What a lot of students might not recognize is that college admissions are kind of like casting for a play. And when you have different roles, you're going to cast different people in those roles according to what those people are like, right? Maybe you have the really funny, jolly guy, and you're going to put him in this role, and you have the sort of meek, shyer girl, and she fits better in this role. Not every actor and not every actress in the world can play every part, and that's kind of how it works with colleges, and here's what I mean by that. Now, as many of you know, a lot of colleges and universities use a process of admission, or most of them in the United States at least, that's called holistic admissions. Now, what that's like, code speak for is totally subjective admissions. Certainly all schools have some sort of ethos that they want to promote. They have a certain kind of student that they're looking for in some ways, and they want students to be alike in that particular caliber. But at the same time, schools have a lot of different departments. If they've already accepted people who fill out certain niches and you fill that same niche, you might get rejected. Now, this also goes for like, what kind of person are you? And what kind of background do you have? And like, what kind of experiences do you have? And yes, sometimes that's gender, and sometimes that's race, and sometimes that's other things. And I know that kind of stuff can really tick you guys off. Don't take it too personally, because a lot of times you just don't get in because they're trying to create this mosaic of persons, and you just aren't fitting into that mosaic. It's not that your scores aren't good. It's not that you didn't work hard in high school. It's not that you're not an amazing person. Number 2, the whims of your application reader. It's kind of unnerving that your entire admissions decision in a lot of ways comes down to the opinion of one human being. And that's the human being who reads your application. At very competitive universities, it's gotten to the point where I think most competitive universities are having one human being read your entire application. There are some that do it in teams. Some have like 2 readers that are assigned to each application, and like one person is doing one task and the junior person's doing these other tasks, and they decide together. Most schools also have like a committee process where what happens is you have all these individual readers who read all their individual applications, and then they go to committee and they decide who gets admitted and who doesn't. So a lot of it's going to come down to the random one person who reads your application. We are all human, and because this is this holistic process, aka subjective process, a lot of whether you get in comes down to, did your essays and did you as a person resonate with that particular human being? There was an article in the Daily Beast that actually detailed one particular college reader who admitted she had food poisoning one day and rejected a whole slew of students because of her food poisoning bout. She was in a bad mood. And the problem at hand is that there's way too many qualified candidates at almost every competitive university that is applying. They might have 6 times as many students who are qualified as they have spots, 7 times, 8 times even. And they've got to sit there and figure out, okay, I've got 8 kids who are totally qualified. Which one do I pick? And at times, it's really hard. It's so hard that it's almost as if they just have to say, oh, this essay's a little less boring. So there's something to be said for when people resonate with what your experience is personally, they're more likely to let you in. But a lot of that too is arbitrary because you're going to be assigned a reader And you don't know which reader that's going to be. If your application reader totally adores you, that doesn't mean that you're through the gates yet. They have to bring you to committee, then they have to fight for you. And while they're fighting for you, however they've broken you down into, a bite-sized log line that they're going to pitch to everybody, some people are going to buy that pitch and other people aren't. And if those people don't buy it, you might not get voted in, even by people who never even read your application. So this whole process, it can be kind of whims. It can be a 5-4 vote that boots you. So my best advice is apply to multiple schools, especially if you're applying to super competitive ones. You're going to get in some places, hopefully. You might not get in all places. And that's just kind of how it works. Third random reason that colleges may reject you is that they're not need blind. Now, I know a lot of schools are need blind. There's about 100 schools in the United States that confess to be need blind. And what that means is they're not looking at how much money you have or your ability to pay when they decide whether or not to let you in. But there's a whole slew of other universities, say over 2,700 of them probably. Those schools are not need blind. So vast majority of colleges probably not need blind. Now, if you're an international student, you may know very well that most schools are not need blind. Even the ones that are need blind for US students, they're not need blind for international students. Your ability to pay is going to be considered as you are considered as a candidate. I think WashU actually has the highest percentage of students who are in the top 1% of income levels in America. I think they have over 20% of their student body has parents in the 1%. So if you're wealthy, they're going to potentially look at that. And that's another reason why colleges and universities often give preference to legacy students, because they know that that promotes giving from alumni. And it promotes this whole family conglomerate of people who are Harvard people or Penn people, and then they're going to keep giving to the university, and it creates this cycle of giving is what they're convinced of. So just remember that if you didn't get in, sometimes there's things that you can't do anything about, and that doesn't mean that education isn't an awesome tool, and that doesn't mean that you can't get ahead, and it doesn't mean that we can't change the system or make the system better. Number fourth random reason that you might get rejected from a college or university, and I have seen this happen before, is that your application is just too good. So this does not happen really frequently, but I have seen it happen to students. For example, I have students that I've worked with before where they get into tons of Ivy League schools, and then they don't get into the University of Michigan, okay? Which seems weird, right? Now, I admit that some of it might be due to the fact that the student maybe didn't work as hard on that application, and maybe their Why Michigan essay isn't as convincing as their, Why Penn essay or what have you. But I think schools like Michigan know a lot of the time they're the backup school, and they don't like to be the backup school. They want to be the school that you go to. And so a lot of times schools like this that are middle ranked or they're not the most competitive schools in the country, but they're highly competitive and they're fighting for their US News and World Report score. They're going to try to protect something called their yield. And yield is the idea that when you admit students, a lot of those students end up choosing to attend. This is an important statistic because it contributes to the US News and World Report ranking of every university in the US. And those US News rankings are what a lot of students use to try to figure out where they're going to apply. And so schools then in turn play these games to try to protect that yield. And one of the games that they play is rejecting you so that they can have higher yield. Just because you get rejected from a school, if it's a middle level school or backup school or something on your list, sometimes all that's happening is that school is trying to climb the US News and World Report rankings. Does this happen a lot? Now, I don't want to freak you guys out because suddenly all of you guys are like, oh no, I'm not going to get into my safeties and then I'm not going to get into anywhere, right? Stop freaking out. This doesn't happen that often, but this is why you should always have at least 2 safety schools, okay? My other advice on this is you always need to be especially careful to show demonstrated interest whenever you're applying to a school that is a backup or a safety, because no one wants to be your backup or your safety. And don't just assume my scores are so awesome, they're just gonna let me in. That's not how it works. Cool? Cool. Number 5, someone else had an advocate and you didn't. As you can probably tell from the discussion here, because college admissions can be so crazy competitive and there's just way too many kids applying for slots at these super hyper competitive schools, sometimes what can happen is the students who have more advantages or students who have more advocates can get into schools more easily than those who don't. What do I mean by people advocating for you? The first thing that I mean is if you go to a private school and you have a super savvy college counselor. I know kids that go to private schools and their super savvy private counselors came from top 10 ranked universities as admissions persons, and they worked in the admissions offices there, and then they got recruited by these savvy upscale private schools to be the admissions person at that high school. So if you have somebody advocating for you in that way, that can help you land an interview that other kids don't get. And if you don't have that kind of sometimes you're not going to get in and somebody else is, even if you guys are basically equivalent applicants. Is that fair? No, I don't think so. Other people who can be advocates for you are your own teachers and your recommendation letters. A lot of times if you go to a giant public high school and there's 40 people in all your classes, your teachers barely know you. And so when they write a letter of recommendation, they barely know you, right? And then at these private schools where you have like 6-person classes or 9-person seminars, and the same teacher has the same student for like 3 years in a row, you'll have some like Ivy educated teacher who like actually went to Yale who's writing your letter for you. Sometimes that increases your chances of getting in. There is my list of 5 random reasons that colleges may reject you. Again, I hope you don't take your rejections too personally. A lot of this process is so random. And over again, I've seen super awesome candidates get rejected by schools, and I scratch my head and think you totally missed out. I hope that you take heart, that you are more important than where you go, and that whatever happens, some of it's totally out of your control and there's no point in stressing out about it. Good luck wherever you end up or wherever you're headed or wherever you're going. And I hope if you're still on this journey figuring out where that is, that you tune in to our channel, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.